In the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night, in the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night.
Hello everyone, I am Anthropomantic Fiend, and I do horror-related things on the internet. You might be wondering why I'm dressed maybe a little bit more extravagantly than usual. That would be because today is not only World Dracula Day, but it is also the birthday of Peter Cushing, who's played Van Helsing countless times in many Hammer horror movies. That is at least as of today when I am filming this on May the 26th. Tomorrow, May the 27th, is the birthday of the almighty Christopher Lee, who plays Count Dracula in so many Hammer movies, as well as my other favorite actor, Vincent Price. Tomorrow I'm going to be watching this masterpiece in honor of all three of them. I don't know which day I'm going to post this, but many happy returns of the day, whichever day you are watching this on. I guess I have a Discord server now. I'm going to be posting that below. I only have Discord because I wanted to join other people's things, but if you want to talk to me about horror and stuff, the link will be there so you can join that. This is definitely not a typical entry into the Hammer Dracula franchise. We discover very early on that there is a satanic cult that is being investigated by this group of spies, I suppose, because there are these really big, wealthy, respected people who are part of this cult. They decide to call on Mortimer Van Helsing, who looks strikingly like his ancestors because he's also played by Peter Cushing. He's a scientist but also an occult expert, so they call on him and ask him about what might be going on with this cult, and we gradually reveal that there are ties with vampirism and more specifically Dracula in the cult, and things just get crazier from there. If you're wondering why I didn't decide to do Horror of Dracula for World Dracula Day, because that's the one that's more directly based on the book, that movie has just been done a million times, and my thoughts on it can pretty much be summed up in a few words, being that movie is amazing. Why did they switch Mina and Lucy's names again? I could probably go on an hour-long rant about switching Mina and Lucy's names in Dracula adaptations because it pisses me off and I hate it, but you don't need to hear that, so I'm doing Satanic Rites of Dracula. The soundtrack for this movie is creepy and gothic, not unlike past scores, but it has this element of sort of a rock or funk thing that gives it sort of this more contemporary action or spy movie feel, which is in keeping with the style of the movie, and it's just really good music. The story, as I said, combines action and gothic horror, but also this element of a satanic ritual, which is actually not really new to the Dracula franchise at all. We get another cheesy, sort of stereotypical movie satanic ritual, which is not anything like real Satanism, but I don't think I even need to say that at this point. The satanic ritual is very over the top and dramatic, and it's a lot of fun. Again, gothic horror plus action spy movie, which is really weird for a plot, but they managed to make it work. There are things about it that are gonna be a little silly, obviously. I think that the fact that there's this really high-tech control room where they're spying on every room in this old dilapidated gothic mansion is hilarious, but it works within the context of what they're doing in the movie. At the very beginning, they've sent in this guy to investigate this ritual and look in on it and see what's happening. When the spies get him back and he's basically half dead, he starts talking about what he saw, and when he says,
"She lies there, waiting for the sacrifice,"
that was actually sampled for Rob Zombie's song The Return of the Phantom Stranger. I have this weird thing where I've listened to Hellbilly Deluxe so many times that I can pick up on like every sample that is used on that album in the first time I watch a movie. There's this little trailer compilation that was on Netflix for a while. I don't remember what it's called. I'll put the title below, but I swear basically every sample used on that album is in that trailer compilation. If you want to play a little game and figure out how many samples from Hellbilly Deluxe are in that trailer compilation, that's a thing, I guess. Anyway, I should be reviewing this movie. This is Mortimer Van Helsing, not Abraham Van Helsing. This is the descendant of the other Peter Cushing Van Helsing. Given that they keep dating back to things that happened in 1972, I believe this is the same Van Helsing we saw in Dracula AD 1972. I haven't watched that movie in a while, so I'm not sure. I think this movie came out in 1973, but they keep dating back to things that happened 2 years earlier, but talking about 1972, so that's a little weird to me. Maybe this movie was supposed to be released later, maybe it was released later somewhere else. I don't know, maybe I'm just misinformed, but I thought that was weird. We eventually discover these Satanists, as well as we've probably guessed from the very beginning, Dracula, have been hiring this scientist who has created this new strain of the plague to basically wipe out everybody on the planet, which is unfortunately, coincidentally, very topical right now. Luckily, our current plague does not rot people's flesh off of their bones. I just thought that was interesting, but it's also interesting because it's a very weird choice for Dracula, because if he wipes out all the people on the planet, he doesn't have anybody to feed on anymore. And I know there are Dracula plague parallels that have been done before with movies like Nosferatu, which is my personal favorite Dracula adaptation. But in this instance, it doesn't work because he's infecting the people that he would have to feed on, whereas in Nosferatu, feeding causes the plague, so that was kind of weird to me. They do kind of address that later, but it feels kind of like they're just trying to cover themselves and come up with some half-baked explanation for their plot. Cushing says, just suppose Dracula yearns for final peace and wants to bring down the whole world with him. It just seems a little bit contrived, but at the same time, I love the idea that Dracula is just such a drama queen that if he's gonna have to finally die after keeping himself alive all these years, he's gonna make the entire world die with him and in the most horrible way possible. As you'll find out in the spoilers, that's not exactly what he wants to do. What he actually wants to do is really confusing. I don't know if the whole plague thing really works, but that's kind of what the whole movie hinges on. It's a little bit nutty, so I just went with it, and I had a great time. There's this harem of vampire women being kept in the basement of this old house where the rituals are happening, which is a touch that is befitting of the Count. We've seen this a bunch of times with other Dracula stories, even the original, where there's the three vampire brides that Dracula keeps with him. Within the context of the movie, it's still really confusing because he's made them into vampires already, which I feel like you wouldn't be able to keep feeding on them if they're already vampires. So why is he keeping these women around? Why is there a vampire harem? I don't know, but there is. There are some sort of action-y sequences and horror vampire sequences with them that are cool. I just don't see what it adds to the story. We've got this whole idea of these really rich, respected people being part of this vampire cult secretly, which could have some political undertone to it, intentional or unintentional, but that's not really the focus of the movie, so to speak. But at the same time, it's an element, and I think it's cool. Other movies have done that too, though. That's just a little parallel that I see a lot with vampire stories, and I thought it was cool that they sort of approached that from a more modern perspective here. Along with all of the vampire stuff, there is sort of the action spy element, because there's this whole network of secret agents on both sides, and there are shooting scenes and this scene where two characters are being shot at by someone who's got a silencer, and it's very tense, and there are fight scenes. Those were pretty well done and not overused. They don't lean too hard into the action thing. It's a nice balance. When we do have the action scenes, they are actually pretty tense, and I really enjoyed them. Visually speaking, we've got gothic flourishes like the Satanic Ritual Room, which I think looks beautiful. Aside from that, there's not really anything particularly visually striking about the movie, but everything looks good. The sets and the costumes and the camera work are all well done, but nothing really stands out to me about them aside from the few little gothic flourishes we do get. Acting wise, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing are always really enjoyable. They both play these really calm, collected, and elegant characters, but they're extremely cruel and ruthless to each other when they need to be, when it all comes down to it, and they work as sort of perfect foils for each other, which is exactly what Dracula and Van Helsing should be. They haven't done bad performances in my eyes. Other than that, some of the cultists can be over the top in sort of a fun way, but all the acting has nothing really stand out about it. Cushing and Lee are great, but all the other actors are serviceable. They're good, but not really interesting. I cared about the protagonists of the story, but there was nothing really intriguing or interesting about them. They were just kind of average. One of the lead Satanists and occultists is this woman that they make a point of telling us is Chinese. She is an Asian actress, and she's the only not white person in the movie, so period racism again, maybe? She acted the character well. I liked her sort of evil, nefarious doings, but period racism, didn't like it. The effects in this movie were kind of standard. We've got a few blood and gore effects, albeit minimal ones, as you do in a Dracula movie, and some dissolves where things are disintegrating or revitalizing and transforming that are not convincing but are serviceable. And we've seen stuff like this dating back to scenes from the Universal movies where Dracula disintegrates in the sunlight and turns into a skeleton. This movie has, upgraded a little bit, but it's still in that same tradition, but effects like that have never bothered me. Overall, this movie is not the best in the Dracula franchise that Hammer has done. I think their more period gothic stuff like Horror of Dracula and Taste the Blood of Dracula was better, but this one is still really fun, and if you like their more modern movies like AD 1972, I think you'll enjoy this one because it takes Dracula into this spy territory and does it pretty well. I think anyone who is a Dracula fan, a Hammer fan, a vampire fan needs to check this movie out because it's a really good time. That is my spoiler-free review of the Satanic Rites of Dracula. Here are the spoilers. We've been hearing about this big businessman named D.D. Denham for the whole movie, and eventually Van Helsing decides to go confront him in his office. He's obscured by shadow and talking in this fake accent, but you know it's Christopher Lee. They don't really shadow him well enough for you to tell that it's not Christopher Lee. Denham is Dracula, which I think is a really nice approach. Again, the whole idea of these big, well-respected businessmen being these vampires who prey on the people beneath him does have some kind of a political message that could be there. They don't lean into that too much, but it's there, and I think they put enough emphasis on it for it to work for the movie. Even Van Helsing in the movie, calls Dracula the powerful recluse in this moment, and it's just like, of course you'd be this big businessman. But at the same time, not Lugosi. I've reviewed too many Bela Lugosi movies, but Lee, have I said Lugosi already? Help me. Lee is doing this fake accent that sounds like a bad Bela Lugosi impression just to try to cover himself, which is ironic because his regular voice is his Dracula voice, which he eventually comes out with. That was a little cheesy, but I liked the reveal that he was the big businessman. We also get a fight scene between one of our heroes and the vampire women chained up in the basement. The action there is honestly pretty well done, but the way he gets out of it is with running water, and by running water I mean the sprinkler system, which I thought was ridiculous. I think that the sprinkler system isn't quite enough to deter vampires unless you're gonna wait for it to flood the room, and by that point they might escape. I don't know. I didn't think that worked. I think if it's gonna be running water, it needs to be like a freaking river or something, or a stream, or the ocean. It can't be the sprinkler system. They throw out, you know, clear running water can kill vampires, so they use the sprinkler system. That was amusing, but I didn't think that worked. And then shortly after that, we get the big finale where Dracula talks about his plans to spread the plague to the world with his 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, who are these 3 businessmen who he's promised all this nice stuff to, and said that they were only going to be using this strain of the plague to blackmail other countries. Instead, he's infecting them and Van Helsing to go spread the plague, and taking Van Helsing's granddaughter and vampirizing her so they can rule over the desolate world together. And Van Helsing's like, is this what you really want? And Dracula's just like, I've made my choice. I'm doing this. Again, that felt weird to me because I feel like he just need to have more blood constantly in order to keep surviving. And if everybody's either dead or undead, that doesn't make sense. So I just went with it. Eventually, one of the businessmen is forced to crush the vial containing this strain of this plague. Dracula hypnotizes him and forces him to crush the vial, and he just starts screaming. His skin starts rotting off. It's very over the top and entertaining. Eventually, Van Helsing manages to make a cross out of something, as he always does, and Dracula and him run outside. He rescues his daughter. There's more fighting in action. Dracula dies again, and Dracula's death in this movie is interesting. Earlier on in the movie, they've said that the hawthorn plant can kill a vampire because the crown of thorns that Jesus wore was made from the hawthorn tree. Van Helsing basically tricks Dracula into running through a hawthorn tree in order to get to him, and he gets all wrapped up in it and basically gets a crown of thorns around his head and thorns through his hands, and it's this total Jesus Christ parallel thing. I don't know what they were trying to do with that, but okay. And then Dracula gets staked and disintegrated. I'm glad that they're not just going through the same old stake through the heart and sunlight every time, but I don't know what they were trying to do with the Jesus thing. That was weird, but not boring. It was very entertaining. That's where the movie ends. Again, this is kind of a weird entry into the Hammer franchise, but if you're a fan of classic vampire movies and Dracula and Hammer, I think you will get a kick out of this one. That is my review of the Satanic Rites of Dracula. Thank you for watching my video, and hopefully I will see you in another one. Goodbye, and happy World Dracula Day.